The next podcast in this series is about creating applications and what that actually means versus what a lot of people think it means when they get into it. When you're creating an app, you should at least have a business idea behind it, if not an already established business, and you're creating an application as a tool for that business. Far too many people get into the old trap of, I have this amazing idea that's never been done before, create an application, and don't have the support, don't have the marketing. Unless it's a super fun app that we do as a passion, the idea is we want to make money from it. Let's start by just introducing ourselves. Tony, why don't you go ahead?
So thanks for having me. I came up with an idea kind of coming out of the pandemic that I wanted to create a business that made accessing the latest canned releases of craft beer easier and addressed a lot of pain points that customers were experiencing. And on the brewer side, there really wasn't a good way to make your brand stand out or develop long-term relationships with customers. And so that's kind of what led me to this idea of creating a business called Craft Caddy, trying to figure out how to do that, how that business should be built in terms of a tool or a technology. As background, I owned a craft beer bar and bottle shop, which is where I met Peter originally.
I was drinking at the bar. Tony was working.
Yeah, yeah. Peter is what we called in the trade a frequent flyer. So,
Gregor, you've been with us before.
Yeah, Gregor Schulte in product management since 15 years across apps, web, consumer electronic, fintech. Had the pleasure to work with Peter every now and then. Tony, it's great to see you. I'm really grateful for you being on, bringing like a practical case to this. So curious about, since last time we spoke, what you've been up to. My background is heavy in telecommunications, right? So my career started in 2008, just when the iPhone had come out, right? So it's like, let's make an app for this.
You could literally get an idea, create something, and sell it on the App Store and never have to think about it again.
Right. Yeah.
Those days are over.
And that's literally what it was, right? There was easy funding. So I think back then it was easier to put something together as opposed to now, because also consumer standards have grown and everything. So
that's true.
A lot of things have gotten easier, but a lot of things have gotten more complicated, I would say.
All right, and Juan Fabregat, give us an in-depth study of your technical life.
First time on the podcast. Thanks for having me. And I'm a software engineer by trade, but I have a product background. So I used to be in product management, and I used to manage software teams for a long time, almost 10 years actually. I'm basically a fractional CTO for many businesses, right? So a business that maybe doesn't have the funds to necessarily hire a big team, or maybe they're just getting off the ground with some seed money. And I essentially consult as basically bring technical expertise to the table. But yeah, it's a quick primer on myself.
Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. I feel it's very important to help instruct, or at least have conversations about how is this going to be made a business? When are you going to be getting to that point where you're profitable or at least maintainable? Tony, when you were creating the Craft Caddy application to start with versus what you know of it now, did you consider the team you were going to have to put behind it in terms of getting users to use the system and for the ongoing maintenance? Did you know what you were getting into on day one?
I didn't approach it from okay, what kind of team am I going to need to run this business? I approached it from a classical business school perspective, which is your business is a business first, and successful businesses are meeting a need. Having operated a brick and mortar and having a little bit of experience shipping beer to consumers.
What was the difference in, I guess, customer acquisition between your brick and mortar? How did it differ about getting people through the real world doors versus the virtual doors?
So my business in Oak Park, I'll be totally upfront, a lot of it was just timing, and location. that was still during the heyday of craft beer. There
Mhm.
was an explosion of it in the Chicagoland area. There really wasn't any competition. We opened up the doors the first day and people just started coming. And that was super lucky. I think a lot of businesses, even non-brick and mortar businesses are about which part of the cycle you're in. And that has a lot to do with success. This business, Craft Caddy, I'm having to spend a lot of time, and I'm still trying to figure it out. When you're no longer in the sweet spot of the cycle, how do you gain customers or a large enough following, enough traction to make your business successful?
I like that you bring up like the industry life cycle, right? Right time, right place. That goes a long way, and that applies to like the digital domain as well, right? One of the kind of hard lessons that I learned in my corporate career is that even though I was working for a huge telecommunications provider, is even if you have budget, like good product doesn't sell itself. Where do you find that market to the product that you've made to create that fit? But the people walk into your bar, they want to know the beers, they want to buy it physically, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, how do you make getting all of that digitally interesting and valuable, right?
And initially, I thought my second business, Craft Caddy, was going to have a brick and mortar location, and it was going to kind of be this hybrid business. But I could already start seeing that peak craft beer had passed and that consumer behavior had passed. They wanted an experience that was different and that didn't necessarily lend itself to a physical location. They didn't need any more of those. So that was like one of the many iterations that I've gone through as I've tried to build a business. The ability to scale and not have to take on tons of inventory as you grow, but rather just focus on user growth and acquisition.
Which, I mean, you trade off that liability and financial risk with increased shipping costs in your case. It escalates massively, and being able to get your margins with the shipping costs with the products is a very, very hard thing to do unless you're working with organizations that are fine taking a hit on shipping.
Yeah.
But if I like even before fulfillment, if I put myself into Juan's shoes now, you need to have like a distribution network integration with all of the suppliers, which entails like a warehouse kind of system, right? You need to have an order management system. You need to have all of that connected to the front end. And you need to have that stable and reliable. So like before even the order starts, I'm trying to more and more kind of depict like that's a big machine that needs to pay for itself even before you start fulfilling.
Essentially having the business plan support the decisions that you make for the product. Or, at the end of the day, when you make decisions for a product, you make them because you see some kind of return on investment, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of founders struggle with this. They struggle with the idea of what is the value of this particular thing bringing to this group of people, and how is that value returned to me in the form of their money? People do get lured by the idea of technology more so than the idea of a business, even though they're the same thing in this context, right? In this context, the app is a business.
I think they get clouded by the fact that it's a digital platform, but if you take a step back and think of it as a brick and mortar and everything that goes into play, including the potential warehousing or shipping costs, and factoring those into your ongoing inevitable costs, and then the value to your customer may decrease because they're paying a higher price.
So even the stuff you're talking about, Gregor, for example, thinking about integrations and thinking about whether those costs are worth it based on the return, like that high level thinking already to me is positive, because I think the reality is the first mistake that most people make when going into tech for the first time is they think that their product is finite, right? That's their first mistake is, hey, I'm going to hire some contractor to build me an app. And then when he's done with the app, that is the end of the whole thing. I'm just going to put it out there and I'm going to make tons of money. You would never run a business that way. You would never say, okay, I'm going to open up a lawn care business, and when the business is open, I'm done. No, you have to actually service your customers.
Exactly.
And Peter, we always have this joke in our project, which is like, if you're not embarrassed about the first product that you launch, you overdid it. I don't know, Tony, if you can elaborate on this, because you're launching the app to find out what sticks.
It'd be really interesting to know what, because I know you spoke to a bunch of investors on the West Coast, and what was the feedback they gave you?
The comments I got was everything from your box sucks, like it needs to be a real experience and feel special when you get this box in the mail. So much of it is dominated by venture capital and venture investors. And it's really important for founders to remember that that isn't the only source of funding.
Mhm.
And in fact, venture is probably wildly inappropriate for like 99% of businesses out there, because what'll happen is venture will try to make your business solve their problem rather than you running your business and making business decisions that are in the long-term interests of your business.
Obviously, businesses can be very expensive.
Yeah.
And at some point, you need to be bringing in a lot of money, or you need to be able to get funding. So how much do you put into a product to get to that stage of funding? I mean, how much money do you really need to start on this adventure?
It just varies wildly. So you'd have, for example, teams that are very highly technical, and those people need pretty much zero funding. All they need is their own time. They just build their own product, and you just kind of push forward. There's also the goal side. A lot of people would like to run a venture-funded business. That's their ideal. That's how they want to operate. They want to grow fast. They want to scale fast, and I think that's right for some people. Other people prefer the bootstrap approach, and so when you're bootstrapping, again, that's where skill comes in, right? Like if you're highly technical, or if you have a highly technical co-founder, then that can help essentially kind of fulfill that dream of bootstrapping and kind of doing your own thing. And CEOs and founders that are non-technical can contribute immensely to that business, because they obviously, there's a lot more to be done than just building.
If the nucleus of the idea is not attractive enough, having that idea perfectly executed is not going to make it better.
Monetizing later is a completely viable strategy, right? What's not a viable strategy is to have no monetization plan whatsoever.
Right.
Like that's
Yes.
non-viable. If you're Google, yeah, maybe, right? If you're a big small business, like if your monetization
But
strategy...
even then they're going to shut you down, because they also do annual budgets. And 3 years in a row, no business division leader is going to be like, all right, I'm going to have you burn cash for the third
Can
year
I-
in a row. It's like, you're
Can I just jump in there though? Like,
Yeah, please.
I just want to go back to the point about cycles. Like you guys were talking about, how far along the path with your MVP, or how much of a business do you need to be able to show investors? A lot of this, interest rates determine that.
Mhm.
Money is cheap, and people can't get the returns that they need by investing in traditional assets like bonds. They overallocate into the sleeve of their portfolio that's the riskier stuff, venture. When interest rates are really low, crazy ideas start to get funded. Oh, you're seeing it right now with like a lot of businesses that were failing, and like everybody's asking, how in the world did these guys ever get funded in the first place? Like, what was the business strategy? Or it doesn't seem like it wasn't well funded. Well, all the way back in the late 90s, that was Webvan. It was because money was cheap and free. And people were like, yeah, I know 9 out of 10 of these ideas are going to flame out and not work. The people who fund my venture fund need, a grand slam to make up for the weak performance in these other assets that they're invested in. And so I'm going to invest in all these crazy ideas. So it's just the cycle you're in a lot of times determines that.
So how does that inform your pricing now? And how did pricing pan out when you did launch, actually? Because obviously what you're saying is you need to be profitable because you can't rely on external funding, and you kind of need to bootstrap this, and it needs to carry itself, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's where we are in the cycle right now.
Yeah.
Right. Interest rates are where they are. Investors are expecting a company's unit economics to be profitable from day one or pretty darn quickly. And, a lot of companies have gotten themselves into the trap of, they play by the old rules when interest rates are low, which is give away your product for free or damn near free. Focus exclusively on growth. Slam your foot on the accelerator, drive as fast as you can your company, because what's most important is dominate your category. Each category only has one winner. And then you'll achieve scale, and down the road, you'll be profitable and you'll have won. Yeah. And that doesn't work anymore in this environment. And so you have to build a company, I think, right now, unless you attach the name AI to it.
Or crypto.
That is actually a real business,
The reality is a lot of these companies have now loans coming due in the next 1 to 2 years that they cannot refinance at those same rates. And what that means is, okay, need to cut 10% of the workforce, no matter what, because otherwise we're underwater, right? And
or even better, you should raise prices.
Yeah, that's another one.
Because, if you're exchanging value with your users, are you monetizing it?
Yeah.
Right? Which is why I asked for your pricing. It's like when you launched, you must have been, I don't know, did you have aha moments when you had customers who you were really confronting with, all right, this is the product you get, this is fulfillment costs, all of this. Did you have any aha moments along those lines? Or
people's expectations have been set by Amazon, free shipping, right?
Right.
The
Yep.
reality is shipping's really expensive. Beer is heavy. Beer is heavy, you know?
Right.
And you have to have a signature because you're shipping alcohol. UPS charges $7.95 for that signature. How do you absorb those costs? Because why do I have to pay for shipping?
Right.
You know, from consumers? And because that's how they've been trained. I came to the conclusion of I'm not going to make very much money per shipment. I ultimately will be able to make money through something like using all of the data that I'm gathering about the business, about consumer behavior, about brands, and being able to monetize that, which is very high margin. But in order to do that, you have to have a critical mass of users. Otherwise, the data isn't meaningful.
You looked at what value are you generating across the board, right? Because looking at the end consumer, that's the person who enjoys the beer, right? But what you just did is you look, what does my solution actually unlock? And that is also for your suppliers. You have found out that you at scale are going to generate customer insights, which is user analytics, which is going to be valuable information that you can, relay back to them and essentially monetize. That's already a pretty sophisticated thing to do. So I mentioned last time, since September, I am trainer for a framework that is called Software Profit Streams. And that's by some Silicon Valley people, right? By Applied Frameworks. And that kind of journey starts with looking at the customer and the solution and how they exchange value with each other, right? Because you've understood that you actually have this kind of B2B angle to your value proposition, right? A lot of people are just running around saying, like, what do I do for the end consumer, right? And that's like the be-all of it. But what you've done is you're already looking at, all right, where am I generating value and how do I exchange that value with everybody involved in the system?
I'm a big fan of businesses that see technology as the next step rather than the first step, right?
Sure.
So, people who build like Excel spreadsheets as their solution to a problem and then say, well, this would be great as an application or something like that. The reality is that it was unscalable, right? So the manual process does not scale very well. So where yes, you would have a cost center in development work, that development work can be scaled to potentially hundreds of thousands of people once it's done one time.
Now you're thinking about your online customer support staff, your online advertising and marketing needs, everything that comes with a brick and mortar business, you have the digital equivalent.
Yep.
So you now have what I would consider not separate business because they're connected in terms of the product and hopefully the communication, but you have two completely different entities that you're having to manage in similar ways.
Yes, you're building an app to do business. You're extending the business in a way that needs to be digitally delivered to users, but yeah, you're building a business, right? That's my passionate take last time on product managers being more, you need to be outward focused to the customer, and you want to monetize something and you want to make money with it. That's the reason my business is. And I like how we've also gone back in time to say, all right, the heydays of free money and super easy funding is over. Interest rates are high. Peak app happened already, right? So if you now start something new, you have to make a good case for this to be profitable. An app is always a means to monetize and to deliver business back to value back to the business. And that has to be higher than the cost.
As we're talking right now, there are people who are getting valuations on their AI company that has no path to profitability. And VCs are out there, I'm sure, like, I got to put this money to work. I've got to be able to show my limited partners that I'm in on this new thing.
Right.
And it keeps going, man. It just, money needs a home, and it keeps going.
There's 2 layers of sustainability. The first one is solution sustainability. Is the value that you exchange with your customer actually high enough that they can monetize? So how much value do you give them, and how much monetization can they give you back? The second one is economic sustainability, and that is, how do you set your pricing? Do you have a profit engine, and what's the ROI for the customers? But the third one is the sustainability of the relationships that you have along the value chain. So relationship sustainability is, what are the licenses that you're using for your product? What are the terms and conditions that you have both like upstream and downstream, so with your customers, right? So is it a subscription in your case maybe, right? So are you monetizing on a monthly basis, and you're like, all right, I'm going to give you 1 free shipping, but what does that 1 free shipping include? Is it 5 kegs full of craft beer, right? Or is it 1 bottle, right? And do you have all of those contractually compliant with your suppliers and with your customers?
I think there's something to say about using third-party software to get you to where you need to be because, I mean, with any business, there has to be doubt with anything. Yeah. You can believe in it to the nth degree, but there's always a chance it's going to fail for X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's a global pandemic and you were creating something that was almost certain, whatever it might be. So if you can get to market fast and prove that you can make money and it's appealing and you can grow your audience, that's going to be more appealing than you spending a long time creating your own custom stuff at expense to get to that same conclusion.
Yeah. Well, this is what we talked about earlier, and it gets to the heart of the idea of iterating and not waiting too long before you actually put stuff out. I do know a lot of these AI companies, for example, basically just started as we're gonna wrap GPT and essentially build like a custom design tool around GPT or something like that.
Sure.
And then if they got enough traction, they got funded, and all of a sudden they've got their own AI teams now. They've got, they're fine tuning their own models, and essentially trying to get off of that dependency and compete in a more sustainable way.
I think it goes back to your point though, Peter, which is like it's just a tool, right? The technology, and if your business isn't addressing customer needs and you don't have that relationship components or the core value that your business is bringing. Otherwise you'll just, I don't know, maybe you get lucky and you ride the wave during the beginning of the cycle, but it's not sustainable.
Tony, when it comes to the supplier relationships, may I ask, how much involved were you or are you constantly with those? Because they're essentially your enablers.
You have to spend a lot of time with them. The industry is kind of quirky. It's filled with a lot of quirky people who are sort of artisans. They are artisans, and they don't necessarily go into this to make a fast buck. At the same time, the business has gotten a lot harder. And so they might be more open to new ideas in terms of sales channels and working with people with different business models. It's really important that you develop those relationships with those vendors.
What are the major things to take away? What are the biggest risks? What would you advise people against, or what would you encourage people to do? Gregor, why don't you kick it off?
Well, first of all, I think when people have the idea to come up with an app, I think it's wonderful, right? Because you're putting yourself in the consumer shoes. You believe in something that is cool for people to use and get something out of it which doesn't exist yet, right? I think that's a wonderful thing to do. I think we've violently agreed that this has probably never been as challenging as now, although there's a lot of things that you technology-wise can just, get off of the shelf. Monetization, Stripe integration, all those things are like way easier even since we started working together, 5 years ago, right? So, but it's a crowded market. It's super, customer acquisition is just expensive, and also to positively differentiate yourself, it's just, you have to build a brand. You have to be different. You have to be unique and really strike a chord to get customers' interest, right? So, and then I think you need to do a lot of upfront. I love what Juan said. It's like, you can't just start with the idea and wing it. I think the profit engine at the center is something you need to have figured out. Like, you need to have the economic sustainability in there. You need to have the solution sustainability in there, and you need to have the relationship sustainability in there.
As the podcast suggests, you aren't building an app, you are building a business. Businesses cost money, ongoing costs. You're not building something like you did back in the day, which is plug and play, put it in the app store, forget about it. You need to be able to sustain it long term, understand what it's going to go through iterations, and you're going to build something initially that's going to take many different forms over its lifetime. You're not going to get it right the first time, and all of that costs money. So when you think about building an application, think about it from a brick and mortar. Think about how do you get customers in the door and everything that goes around that, and then equate that to a digital presence. And you have a business. You don't have an app. The app is the tool.
Yeah.
One.
The reality is there are people out there who understand how to run a software company, right?
Sure.
But the reality is most people don't. Most people have no idea what it takes to run a software company, what it costs, how to work with the people, or how to actually even be a product manager of a technical tool, right? They just, even though they use apps every day, it's a very different experience to actually build something. So again, I know it's a little controversial, and there are definitely exceptions, and there are people who can do that because they have experience in a similar field. So somebody who's a product manager in tech, that person would be a great fit to be a CEO and just hire a team of developers and run with it, right?
Sure.
Somebody who has no expertise at all in the tech field, has not even been adjacent to it, it's very difficult to say, okay, I have an idea for an app. There's no actual business here yet. The app will be the business, and I'm going to hire devs, and I'm going to understand the price points. I'm not going to waste money overpaying people. I'm not going to waste money hiring the wrong people. I'm not going to waste money with them building the wrong thing 10 times, right? Those things are very hard assumptions to take for granted. Like,
even
the reality,
for experienced people that work in tech often hire the wrong people.
100%. So I think if you make those assumptions and you say, I'm not going to make any of these mistakes, those are not great assumptions to make.
Yeah.
Before we go to Tony, I want to make one comment though. Even if you get an app out, right, the table stakes for just having that out there exposed to customers have also gone up, right? So you need engineering support, right?
Sure.
I've been in technical product management for a long time, but still, it's like, now when you've got something in Google Play, right, you need to have the dependency need to be updated, right? It's like Google Play is going to tell you your app is outdated if you don't work on it pretty much. Security updates, compliance, like you need to have your Google business account up to date and all that stuff, licenses to maintain and all these things, right? You need somebody with engineering background to figure that out all the time.
Make sure you're solving a real problem that isn't just an idea you think is cool, but an idea that other people have articulated. Make sure that you have some sort of special insight, some sort of, if not domain expertise, but like some sort of edge or something that lets you know something that's about an industry or about how things work that is a part of your business model. Make sure that the solution is what leads you to the technology and that requires technology, rather than just building technology.
Very cool. Craft Caddy, everyone. Get your beer here. Well, thanks, everyone. Much appreciated. I thought a great conversation. So appreciate you all being here. And
Thanks, Tony. Power to you, man.
Thanks, great to meet you, Tony.
yeah, nice to see you again.
join these going forward. This is great.
Yeah, perfect.